Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I want to focus in on some claims that Boris Johnson made about his handling of healthcare, subject them to a little bit of critical analysis and fact checking. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So with this PMQs, it was always going to be, I suppose, to begin with, snide remarks concerning Johnson's confidence vote before moving on to more normal political issues. And it started off with Labour's Angela Eagle noting that this week has shown how many loathed the Prime Minister. And she said that's just in his own party. And she asked why if 148 of his own MPs don't trust him, why should the country? Obviously, Johnson responded by saying, well, it's quite normal to pick up political opponents by doing big, remarkable things in government. Is it? Isn't doing big, remarkable things supposed to win you support? And where it does earn you political enemies, are they really supposed to be on your own side? If doing big, remarkable things turns your allies into your enemies, it could just be argued that any big, remarkable things you actually have been doing are not necessarily in everyone's interests. I mean, I don't wish to invoke Godwin's law, but any number of fascist leaders have done big, remarkable things. We don't thank them for it. But then on to Starmer's questions, and he had healthcare in his sights. And I'd like to think that Labour will make a conscious effort to focus attention on normal political matters now. I think they will. I think that's what they want to do. Because yes, the issue of Johnson's fitness to govern will keep coming back. There will still be PMQs where it's a thing again. But that problem is now largely for the Conservatives. Starmer has his Privileges Committee investigation. The public don't trust Johnson, so Labour can afford to push their own policies now. This is going to be essential. So after his own little snide remark, where actually he was taking the mickey out of Nadine Dorries rather than Boris Johnson, he said, because Johnson came into the chamber, there were some Tory cheers. I think it was not that many of them, but very loud. And Starmer said he didn't know if the noise that the Tory MPs were making was cheering or booing. Then he asked about the statement from Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries that the NHS were unprepared for the pandemic, which refers to an attempted attack on Jeremy Hunt, a challenger to Johnson, where Dorries thought that she'd scored a winner by saying that the Conservatives didn't prepare us for the pandemic, only to be told that she'd actually blasted the ball into her own net. Johnson replied that governments all over the world were not prepared for the pandemic, but he claims we had the fastest vaccine rollout in the world. Couple of things here. The first is that we did not have the fastest rollout in the world. In fact, it wasn't even in the top 10 in Europe for most of last year, much less the rest of the world. In terms of the state of play now, it has actually made some ground back. We're actually looking in a better position now than we did last year. We are currently in 14th place in the world. Still a long shout from where Johnson reckons we are. My second reaction to Johnson's statement was echoed by Starmer, who pointed out that Johnson was not actually denying that his government were unprepared. And I think I would have gone further. I would have pointed out that unlike perhaps much of the world, the UK had specifically known that the number one threat to the nation was a global pandemic. We were expecting it. That the government ran Operation Cygnus several years ago in order to test our readiness for it because they had it cited as their number one threat to the nation. I'd have asked why we were unprepared for what the government knew was the number one threat to the nation for over a decade, and why they did not implement the recommendations from their own investigation into our readiness for it. But perhaps he thought there was more political capital in current healthcare arrangements rather than attacking the past. So he pointed out that Johnson promised 6,000 more GPs, but that the Health Secretary had said this promise is not going to be kept. Now, at this point, I did note that the cameras showed the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, leaning over to tell Johnson something. Starmer also pointed out that GB access was considered inadequate even before the pandemic, as if basically to stop Johnson blaming COVID for everything. Didn't stop him trying, mind you. He said Starmer's wrong and that there are a record number of doctors in training. Of course, the thing about doctors in training is it's not doctors in the NHS. Of those doctors in training, not all are going to qualify. Those who do are not necessarily going to work in the NHS. In fact, of those who want to, not all will be taken on, even though we're short. There are qualified doctors on an NHS waiting list, even now. Even though we need them, they're qualified, they're wanting to work, they're still on a waiting list. What matters is how many doctors, nurses and other healthcare professionals we have in the NHS per capita. Is it what? It's all right to talk about record numbers. The population's growing. As the population grows, we need more. Is it what we need? No, it's not. Is it as much as the Tories promised? No, it's not. Is it even what Boris Johnson personally promised? No. But this is what Johnson does. He keeps talking about how great things are going to be in the future. Just wait, it'll be fine. I know it's bad now, it'll be grand in the future. Just keep voting for me and it'll be fine. So he doesn't talk about how many doctors and nurses we have, only of those in training, or how many extra there were compared to some other previous time under the Conservatives. It might be a reasonable thing to say if he'd only just come to power, because you can't conjure up professionals out of thin air, but his party's been in government for 12 years. Starmer then quoted Tory MP Jessie Norman, who said there are an extra 135,000 people waiting for cancer tests. Johnson said that he'd cut the time for cancer tests because he could hire more staff thanks to his brilliant handling of the economy. The question is, has he cut the time for cancer tests as compared to the last Labour government, or just compared to his own government? Because that's the question. Now, it's not always easy to find the exact data you want, but I did have a good look and I found it. First, I found some data. I'll link both these sources down below, of course. A chart showing how the number of people getting seen for cancer tests within 2 weeks on the NHS plummeted under the Tories. This only goes up to the end of Theresa May's time in office, so I'll link another document down below which has today's figures. So let's see now. In the first year of Tory rule, the number was over 95%. If you needed a referral for cancer test, over 95% got seen within 2 weeks. By the time Boris Johnson came to power, it was less than 92%. So has he improved it from that? David Cameron, Theresa May have messed up, but has Boris Johnson got it right? No. Right now it's just under 79%. He's crushed it like no previous Tory Prime Minister. Objectively, cancer wait times are getting worse. And it doesn't matter whether Johnson wants to compare himself to Labour, which he'd be advised not to do, or even to one of his Tory predecessors. He has crushed those waiting times. And Starmer made the point that cancer wait times have been going up for a decade. He said that Johnson claims that paint jobs and refurbs are the same as new hospitals. He said that patients are at risk because of the failure to fix inadequate buildings. Johnson tried to argue that Labour bankrupted the hospitals, which isn't true on any level, of course. First of all, you can't actually bankrupt a public body, only a private organisation. Second, patients got much better and faster treatment on the NHS under Labour, and in case people don't remember, we're not paying through the nose with the highest taxes in 70 years for it like they are now. Starmer then attacked Johnson's attempts to pretend things were not as they are. He said it didn't work. It didn't work to pretend the rules weren't broken, that the economy's moving, or that 48 hospitals are suddenly going to be built. He said Johnson wants to change the NHS contract so patients wait 2 years for treatment instead of 1, which is true. Johnson tried to defend himself by saying wait times have been cut for those waiting the longest. Do you know what? This actually brought a smile to my face, because after 3 years of Johnson's toxic politics, this was almost normal. As a response, this is how it should be. The leader of the opposition makes a claim attacking the Prime Minister and the government in general. The Prime Minister tries to refute it with a statistical fact that then muddies the waters, misleads the unwary. It's how politics is supposed to be. No lies, no objective lies, just hiding behind stats. So Johnson has indeed cut the wait time for those with the longest wait. Does that mean that waiting times have been coming down? No, the waiting times have been going up. But it's true to say he's cut the waiting time for those who are waiting the longest. And do you know why that is? So he can claim it. Because it's easy to tell the NHS to prioritise appointments for those waiting the longest, but it doesn't stop an increasing number having to wait longer than they should. Very few people should be waiting more than 2 weeks for their referral, yet nearly a quarter are. Almost everyone got seen within 2 weeks under Labour. Now more than 1 in 5 have to wait longer, some much longer. But Starmer wanted to push the economic side of it as well and pointed out that the Tories were raising taxes because they failed to grow the economy. Now this is a line that Labour are talking about a lot. It's what they want to get through to the public, because if they can do that, it wins them a lot. Because the Tories say they're the party of low taxes, but you're paying the highest taxes in most of our lifetimes. I have never paid such a high tax burden as now. I don't just mean because of what I'm earning. Just in my lifetime, the average tax burden has never been higher. Hasn't been, unless you are in your late 80s, you have never paid taxes like they are now. The reason your taxes are so high is because the economy is not growing. That's the point Labour are pushing. And if they can get that through, it'd be a big moment for Labour. The problem is that lines of communication that they refuse to use between themselves and the public, well, aren't being used. But where they can get messages across, they will know what to focus on. Cost of living, the economy, the NHS, to a lesser extent, taxation, environmental issues, education. These 6 policy areas will need pushing because they're important to people. And I thought Starmer did quite well in exposing the difference between Johnson's promises and reality here. I get that he doesn't have as long as I do to completely refute all the points. He also completely silenced what few Tory MPs were trying to cheer for Johnson at the end, when he talked about a footballer having to crowdfund to pay for an operation that he'd otherwise have to wait 2 years for, and someone whose mother had died waiting for an ambulance. Even Tory MPs know not to crow at grim realities like that. But I would be critical in saying what I'd like to see more of is what Labour would do differently. That's what voters are waiting to hear. Starmer should be structuring his questions in 3 parts, I think. First part, what the Tories promised. Quote from the manifesto if needs be. Second part, what the reality of 12 years of Tory government has actually brought. Third part, what Labour would do differently. There will be times when they can even add in how it was better under Labour before. But anyway, this did not occur on this occasion. But I will finish off with what I thought were the 2 best lines, one from Starmer, one from Ian Blackford from the SNP. So when Starmer was talking about Johnson's policy to switch from making patients wait up to 1 year for surgery to up to 2 years, in order to, lower the bar yet again on standards in the NHS, he then moved on to A&E waiting times. And he said, 24 hours at A&E used to be a television programme. Now it's his policy. I thought I could see Priti Patel trying not to laugh there as well. But then Blackford had a good one as well. I have to say, I'm not going to go over his questions today because I didn't ask any. But one good line was when he said, week after week, I've called on the Prime Minister to resign. I've been met with a wall of noise from Tory benchers. I thought they were trying to shout me down, but it turns out 41% of them have been cheering me on. That was a good one. That was a good one. But those are my thoughts anyway. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.